12:59. Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
All right, welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. Come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns. And now, just because we've got nothing else better to do, we solve all the problems people are having out there. So this is episode 1200 something, because we've been doing this show every single weeknight since 2016, since a lot of you were born, since before a lot of you were born. So we have been doing the show in a couple of different formats over the years, and now we're going to, take on the challenges of the Second Amendment and win. So throwing a link out there if you want to join in, feel free. I'm not really interested in talking about the news of the day. We're interested in taking the conversation to the advanced level. So let's see who all jumps in. Walt, most 2A person tonight is Walt. First. We had a chat earlier. What I've been doing on this chat is going in and looking at all the different stuff I've been watching throughout the day. So we'll start off with that. And if we can open up I should have done it this way. Most 2A. There's DJ jumping in, second most 2A. Being the second most 2A makes him 2A. That's like TOO 2A or double 2A or what happens like that. No, I did that other one on the other channel because I figured no one would jump in, and then I figured I would be able to just work on that infographic of listening to. I've been watching a show called Government Agents Versus, and then they fill in the blank. There's like a whole bunch of different things that the government agents go against, and they basically meet in a room with this lady, and then they figure out what they're going to do, and then they go do it, and then they meet in this room with this lady again. It's a pretty boring show, but I've been watching it all day. So it's something like The Long Range. It's been on in the 30s or something. Anyway, so I guess I was going to start out this show with the stuff that I've been watching or whatever. And today's a pretty decent day. I've gotten quite a bit of stuff done and just had videos playing over here on the other computer. So first I want to throw out there, because I stuck it up here first, that just because no one has changed 2A, does it mean it can't happen? We'll put that out as a first challenge, not to the people in here, but to the people out there. If you're watching this show, you're doing it wrong. This is a conversation. So these aren't bleacher seats. You're not at an auditorium or some sort of a theater. Instead, you're sitting at your computer at home, or you're somewhere with a phone, and you can wiggle your finger, you can type on that keyboard and be part of what we're talking about here, using the power of the internet and not just turning this into some bullshit radio show back in the day on the internet, right? So that's the first one, is just because no one has changed today, does that mean it can't happen? Like I was kind of alluding to in the other chat, things happen out of nowhere sometimes. Not everything gets telegraphed. So when unprecedented things happen, did somebody give them permission first, or did something, that would happen with intent, or was it all a bunch of accidents? And then I guess as a challenge, and this isn't necessarily for all y'all, but all the cowards that come across here just to cheat and to try to figure out how to copy off the good stuff. How many people currently changing 2A can you name? And maybe it's just a mental exercise. We don't have to do it here, but whenever you're sitting around thinking about being mopey or whatever, think about how many people you can think of off the top of your head. Hopefully it's a shit ton. And I suspect it'll be a shit ton, because as you start to think about it, you start thinking about it by state, by area of interest, by year that they came on board. I bet you'll start thinking about more and more. When you think about that, I don't know, will that change your outlook? I don't know. But that's what we're trying to do, is change things here. Technically, they haven't already changed, what is this saying? Technically, they haven't already changed it, just not present. Or technically haven't they already changed it, just not positively. Change what? I don't know, there's a lag, so I don't know what the hell I was talking about. So the first thing is Daily Bullet. Second Amendment Foundation has been doing a daily show. I don't know why it's recorded, but they don't schedule it for the same time every day. Has anybody been able to figure that out? I know he records them like a month ahead of time, but they just randomly come out sometimes before I'm awake and sometimes in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, I've been wanting.
It's one of those things where there's usually a spot in the morning, and it was more consistent, over the last couple of weeks. But I'd say that in the last, say 8 or more broadcasts, it has been popping at weird at inconsistent times. But it's always an AM drop for me.
But today, I forget, I don't remember. I think it came out a little later. Anyway, they were talking to some guy from a place called 2A NYS, which I never heard of before, and it stands for 2A, and then NY is New York, and S means something. So, fighting for 2A civil rights in New York City, no, New York State, I guess, and beyond. I never heard of NYS before. I'm not from that part of the world. So, never heard of them before. So that's interesting. I'll have to throw them into the project next time I've been there editing and updating. Then we had Walt's thing about Palo Alto City Council guy. That was a shorter one. Was that an impromptu, or is that one that you had scheduled and produced?
Oh, that was an impromptu. Actually, it was funny because we just did the video. Maybe that's something we can talk about if we got some time tonight on how I research 2A news. But that was something that I saw come through locally, and that's been part of a broader trend. I talked about Dublin, where they enacted a safe storage ordinance. They're also doing that in Palo Alto, and they're also looking at expanding to include firearms taxes, ammo taxes, more age restrictions, mandatory liability insurance. They're looking at going pretty crazy over there. So I'm trying to raise some awareness and get some people calling and emailing the city council because they were so kind as to give us their phone numbers.
Right on. And I definitely will take you up on it, because that was the goal of the last show, was to offer something, and something more than just a direction to shake your fist at. So, research. How can we find out good info, or find out info, discriminate info that's good or bad, and then how to share it. So I know in the past I've just assumed that people already had a thing. They either created content or they had something to say or whatever. So I've efforted towards helping or offering insight as to how to get it on the line, right? How to post it, but it was always just a given. So in this, I don't know if it's really a series, I'm just going to put some effort towards offering my insight again as to what I do to research. Not like I'm some expert, I'm just some dude who's been researching since I was a little kid, and I've done it on different ways on the internet. So I'll offer some insight as I do it, so you can look over our shoulders, because if you just see an infographic and that's it, I don't know what that's good for. I mean, it's not bad, it's just that it might be more interesting for some people to be able to see how it's created over somebody's shoulder. So that's what we started to do. So yeah, I'll definitely take any insight into how to study or research, especially because, like I say, everything I learned was like how to do it in a library, and I've adapted it to the computers and the internet. I can't even imagine what or how people are taught today to do stuff, or whatever the hell you were taught to do it. And anybody else who's offering it would want to do that, you're welcome to jump in on that one as well. So then we had Crump had a chat with some guy who has a thing going to benefit Crump's niece, and they were chatting just sort of generally about the brace thing. I don't know if anybody was watching that, but one of the things he brought up was, I think it's Nighthawk Medic that keeps bringing up the concept about the ammo shortage, that if there are a whole bunch of new ammo, if there are a whole bunch of new gun owners, and let's say that there's 1 million of them, because nobody knows, but let's just say there's 1 million of them and they all bought a box of ammo. That's 1 million boxes of ammo that need to get sold, right? Like, so, and they probably bought more than one box. So right away, that's accounts for some of the reason why there's a lack of availability, right? So in that frame of mind, or from that perspective, one of the things that Crump brought up was, I don't know what the number he said, but he said it and then I thought of it. I didn't recall, and I didn't rewind to listen to the number, but if there are 1 million Form 1s that have to be sent in, even if it's free for this whole garbage. If it follows through how people would doom and gloom, then that would be a million Form 1s going through to, I don't know, a very few number of whatever agents that follow up on that. So that would be interesting. That would definitely clog it up for many, many years. So you wouldn't be able to, I guess, I don't know, that would be crazy. So yeah, that was just interesting. But again, you could go down the quagmire or the endless path of what could happen, how bad it would be. Then we had, Guns and Gadgets did a video. Jared explained the ATF letter. I was talking about that. He broke it down pretty decent. I can understand why people get upset with Jared though, because he starts out kind of like, I would say 90%, just here's laying it down. And then at the end, he was sort of like, and now this way I got to panic. I'm like, what the fuck? You're doing so good, man. So whatever, he did break it down, and I haven't heard any other explanations of it, so it was pretty decent. Then you got Clover over there being a camera FUD. He probably is not 2A enough to jump into this chat, even though he's invited. And then we got Jaeger did a video on a micro bug out kit that fit in like a sandwich bag type baggie, like the kind you would put a normal sandwich in. And I think that's got a lot going for it. We can chat about that if you want. Crump was over on Hank Strange, who I don't like, and I still don't like him after watching that show. Then you got TED Talks. I watched 3 of them today. And before all this shit started, because this ended up being a long list today, but when I first started out, there was nothing on. The Second Amendment Foundation hadn't gone live. I already watched everything. Walt hadn't posted nothing yet. All this other stuff came out in the afternoon, really. So in this morning, I'm sitting here wondering what's going on, and like I'm working on stuff, but I'd like to have something going on, something kind of noise. I don't like to listen to the radio. So I typed in something like dealing with stressful news or something like that, right? And it came up with a couple of different TED Talks type of videos. And I watched the first one, something about breaking the mediatization cycle. That was horrible. It was all about anti-gun, and it was like the dumbest, like, what would you say, like idiot arguments that I've ever heard before. And everyone was like respecting this person standing there, and then clapped at the end. And the comments were like, oh, you have insight. It was just like garbage. It was just garbage. It was junk. So that can be depressing. I wouldn't look that one up and watch it because it's worthless. The next one was kind of better, only because it wasn't anti-gun as much, but it ended up being anti-gun. And that bothered the shit out of me, that 2 of the things that I searched for stressful news were dealing with gun shit. And it wasn't in the comments or the titles. It was just their frame of mind that somehow talking about guns, equates to talking about stressful. So F you, freaking Overton window, and all the people that have been yanking on it in the wrong direction. And then I found this other one, and it's got a link to it because I thought it was pretty good. It's called News Anxiety, 10 Skills to Manage Anxiety When the News, I forgot, I quit writing in here because it was a long-ass title. I never heard of her before. She's got more subs than me, so she's got like 200,000 subs or some shit. And it is kind of a long video, but I watched it like 4 times because I really liked it, and I grabbed a couple of kernels of ideas out of it, and she gave like, oh yeah, she says right in the topic. So I was like, she gave you like 10 different ways to deal with it. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I'm going to get into that more. And I don't know if people need that or not, but fuck it, I needed to hear it because I think it's going to make me a better communicator when I can hopefully understand when people are stressing out because of their mammalian response to stress. And if I can understand that, then I'll know at least when to shut up. Like there's no point because these people are freaked the fuck out, or however the nice way of saying that is. And then talked about in her video how our brains are designed to see danger and the warning signs of danger, and then what those warning signs do to us as mammals, and how basically we're manipulated as critters to, our basic body functions. We're literally manipulated by that. And she explains it very well and better than I do. And then I watched The Octagon with Chuck Norris, and you're an idiot if you haven't watched The Octagon by now. You should be watching that movie once in a while. It's free on YouTube. The link right there. You can watch anytime you want. You can quit watching this and watch it now. If you want to change the world, learn ninja stuff. And then I put at the end here the YouTube feed. Oh, they offered me a new gun fraud ripoff. So there's this asshole I hate. I forget about him because I hate him so much that I haven't talked to him forever. This asshole came along to the gun community back in like 2012, and he laid down for a little while, and he acts like he does gun shit. But he harvested knowledge off of us. Like, you don't even know why I have the opinions I have, but this guy came in and he just harvested every bit of info he possibly could, and then left us all behind in his wake. Just an asshole. And that guy is a prick. And every once in a while, I will put my hat in my hand, and when there's something important, go over and be like, hey, dude, even though you're an asshole, like, you willing to do something for 2A? And he's like, fuck you. So he's just a dick. Anyway, it turns out I seen something on the feed, and I was like, oh, this looks like manipulative bullshit. And it was horrible. It was such manipulated crap, but it was also amateuristic as shit. So I looked in, one of the first comments was from this other asshole I know. So just keep in mind, there's some real fucking frauds out there that are assholes, and they know how the logarithms work. They know how these mechanisms work. They don't give a shit about the news. Everything that happens in the news is their profit. Like, they know that every time anything goes up, they know how to profit off of it. And it doesn't matter who they are. There's lots of them out there. There just happens to be ones in my radar that I know about. And I kind of wonder, are these fuckers creating, are they created to waste our time? Like, are they created to be the bullshit frosty treat that you gravitate towards, or you let your kid have too often so that we're going to the doctor every 15 minutes? Like, damn, they seem like they're anti everything. Like, they're just a waste of effing time. And of course, their logarithm is going to feed it to me. But anyway, that's my rant. There's a whole bunch of shit we can dig into. If anybody wants to dig in, I'll shut up for a while.
I could say that I had a 4-hour chat with somebody from Chicago that isn't. They weren't anti-gun, but they definitely weren't pro-gun. They were pretty indifferent about it.
Very cool. Like a family, or just a random thing?
Well, it's I kind of met the chick on a dating site, and literally yesterday, and just through casual conversation, the gun topics come up, and because I, with her being from Chicago, I was like, well, originally from Chicago, born and raised, and then she is in my area now. I was like, well, she might, be anti-gun, just the environment out there, you could say. So I was like, I'm not going to waste my time here if, because. So I asked her, and she's like, oh, well, she had the typical views of whatever the government's or media's feeding her and whatnot. And I told her, I was like, I would love to have this conversation with you. I was like, but if we do, I was like, it needs to be at least over the phone. I was like, doing it in text isn't going to do it justice. I was like, because we can go down a lot of rabbit holes, et cetera, et cetera. But I was like, I am very open to having this conversation, and I will gladly listen to your side, and we can go from there. So after about 4 hours of conversation and going back and forth, because she was very, mental health checks and, safe storage laws and, all the buzzwords and whatnot. And through just sitting there, letting her say her piece, and then I'd say, well, how's that going to fix this problem? And I give a example, and she would rebuttal, and I say, well, here's another one, and we go back and forth. And by the end, she was really just grasping at straws, and she had admitted that she was really rethinking her stance. And what had gotten us to that point was she has a young daughter that she is responsible for, obviously, and the idea that she could have to protect her daughter is what really got her thinking. And things were going well. Then somehow George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin got brought up, which I was like, all right, we'll go down that rabbit hole. We're having a good conversation. Most people that I have these conversations with, if they go a half hour and fall apart, and it's not for any lack of trying on my end. I'm always very attentive, and I make sure not to fall into the traps of name calling or anything like that. And a lot of times, like I said, a half hour or so, and that's seems to be the threshold where the person I'm talking to will fall into the name calling, or you're a bigot, you're a sexist, racist, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll ask them, why are you calling me those things? I've done nothing. And at that point, it's usually a lost cause. So we get on to the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin thing, and self-defense. As like, there's a lot of things here, to unwrap with that. And then all of a sudden, she just blurts out, "If you voted for Trump, you're a white supremacist." I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what?" And it went from a good conversation to if you vote for Trump, you're a white supremacist, and if you try and defend it at all, you're a racist. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so I'm still trying to let her have her piece, but I was like, hold on a second, you need to let me rebuttal and explain what's going on here. Is like, because I was like, I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's misguided a little bit. I was like, if you give me a second here, and let me have a say and put in my side, I was like, maybe we can get this sorted out where this disconnect is. And I got, how can you say that to a black woman that's blatantly racist? Click. I was like, okay, conversation over, I guess. But before it went south like that, it was, like I said, about almost 4 hours, and at least had her thinking and whatnot. It was very productive.
Yeah, you don't
So are
have
you
to,
guys going out?
you don't have to have a win for a conversation to be effective, right? If you can understand the other person's position, I suspect if you can understand the other person's position so that they understand that you are interested in the conversation with them, and then you put down some kernels that can be useful for them, then it doesn't have to come to a like agreement where we both figured out some middle ground or something. That's not even always the goal. But if they can understand, I don't know, that there's nuance to gun ownership, for example, or just like golf clubs, there's a reason to have more than one gun, right? They're different tools, like different shovels. You just don't have a shovel. There's different things that your shovels are used for, and there's trowels, right? If once they understand that, if they can go back to anti-gun people and bring that nuance, the same way that they move Overton windows and they devolve or dissolve barriers and stuff, or erode. That's how we do the same, right? By getting them to understand. So, bravo, man! 3 hours. I interrupted DJ.
Let's say I actually, because about halfway through, I had told her, I was like, I have no ambition of changing your mind. I was like, that's never my goal when I have these conversations. I was like, one, I want to learn where you're coming from. I want to see what the other side has to say and their thoughts. I was like, because sometimes, it might change my perspective on something. I'm not omnipotent. I'm not the end all be all. I was like, I can be open minded. I was like, so when I'm talking to somebody, my goal is not to change their mind. It's just to get them thinking. And if I can get them thinking, hopefully, the little bit of like you said, kernels that I drop will get them going and thinking about that and saying, you know what, I need to look that up. I need to research that. And hopefully when they research this thing or that thing, then that leads them on to something else, and that leads them on to something else.
And just the way that you approach that, I'm going to interrupt you, just otherwise I'll forget. So, but the way you approach that by saying, hey, I'm not trying to change your mind. I would just like to better understand your position and offer you insight into mine. Then that sets up a conversation with someone that isn't some sort of I'm going to try to manipulate you or change your mind, right? Now you are literally challenging them to state their position to you in such a way that it's clear. And now if they can't do that, that's perfect. I think that's, in my limited experience dealing with people who are anti, when I've asked that, they have not been able to do it. And I suspect they then have to go home and regroup and either just learn it or change passions, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to learn all that. It's boring. Or whatever reason, you know, I don't hate Trump that much. I'm going to go back to hating the environment or people with fur coats or other things that they care about that they don't get challenged on in that way. I don't know. I think that's a win if they go home, and even if they don't. Again, if our goal isn't always, you know, it has to be like they change their mind or we lose. If they go home and have to reevaluate, then what's the odds that all they're gonna do is go read boilerplate and recite it to us? In which case, I don't know, it's a non-win. But if they go home and figure out that their position is bullshit and all based in non-fact, then maybe we get them as a complete ally, a solid ally, because they've discovered that they were wrong. I think that's the best ally we can get. I mean, that's optimistic as shit, but don't watch my show if you don't like me. You're optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to coddle everyone, and we do need to remember at every turn that though we may have pearls of wisdom, and I'm not trying to use barbecue's conversation specifically here, but those pearls of wisdom are sometimes thrown before swine. And G's absolutely right. You know, they have to get a paradigm shift going on sometimes, but a lot of people just don't want to have their faith and their basis shaken in ways like that. So it's not often, in my experience at least, until there's something dramatic, that there's a sea change in people's views and willingness to adopt a new focus going forward.
The thing I agree, and I think also one thing that's interesting about this conversation is how we're talking about the Second Amendment issue here, right? That's what you're talking about with her guns, and so to hear that Trump red herring kind of come out of left field, there's a number of ways to deal with that rhetorically that I instantly think of, but I think the question I would ask is, what do you think preceded that? What do you think caused her to go from pro guns to Trump to racist? What do you think started that chain in her mind?
Well, we got on the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin thing, and she was saying, "Oh, well, George Zimmerman targeted Trayvon Martin simply because he was black," and I was like, "That might be." I can't say 100%. I was like, but there could also been these reasons, and but at this point, she was already steadfast on it was just because of blatant racism. Which the ironic thing was, the conversation started with her talking about a friend she has down in the Houston area that is really into Black Lives Matter, and he, would say only Black Lives Matter, and how all these things are so racist, and she would argue against that. And then that's how we ended up wrapping up, was her doing the exact same thing that she was telling me about him. Which, like I said, I found it to be very ironic. But I'm still not 100% sure, because she had said something to the effect that some remark that Trump had made, and I had said, Trump makes bad remarks, yes. I was like, but is he blatantly racist? I was like, I don't think so. I was like, he just says things in a bad way that don't come across the way he intends. I was like, then you have the media take and edit things to look worse than they are. And I went to give an example, and that's when she said, "If you voted for Trump, you're a white supremacist." I was like, "Whoa, what in the world?" And after that, I couldn't get a word in edgewise, because I was sitting there just saying, can I rebuttal? Can I, have a second here? Can I jump in? And there's just nothing. I was like, well, this has gone to shit in a handbasket very quickly.
I feel you. I think so. This would be my hot take, my advice, I guess. I think it's pretty wise to divorce Trump from the Second Amendment.
Oh yeah,
especially with that. Yeah,
I wasn't even trying to bring him into it. It was all on her, and because with everything else that we were talking about, normally, she might bring up something else, and I could bring it back in and say, well, for this reason, and now we can bring it back to this, and I think that's part of what started to sway her was the fact that with some of the arguments she would make, I could actually flip them back and say, well, this is why we need this. I was like, and you just made the argument for it without realizing it. I was like, you thought you were making the argument against it. I was like, but in turn, you actually made the argument for why. And so I thought maybe we can bring this back, but nope, we just jumped right off the cliff.
I think like my take would be because I talk with a lot of liberal gun owners. It's kind of my shtick, right? And so when I talk to those people, whenever I talk to someone that is on the left, and I'm very big about that olive branch, for me, what's worked really well is to say, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of everything Trump's done. I think like any president, Trump's done some good things and some bad things. And I think oftentimes it's very easy to see how bad things can outweigh good things. But I'll tell you what, I do think that Trump is at least as racist and sexist as Biden. And I'll give a little laugh. Because I actually do think that, right? That statement, I think, gives them a chance to be like, hey, wait, what are you talking about? What maybe with the candidate I'm hung up on or this or what have you, what do you mean by that? And I think any times that you can provoke a question on those beliefs, when they're very in kind of an emotional, they're in their emotional terrain, right? That they're very comfortable with, which is this Trump's a racist line. Here's all my arguments why Trump's a racist. Here's all these things that he said. That's great, but we're talking about guns. Like, I can agree that Trump's racist. I can disagree. That doesn't matter. But yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. I can understand where things were said poorly or what have you. And I can also see how these things impact the other side. And funny enough, it was Republicans, in my opinion, being racist in California. It was Ronald Reagan, who decided that open carry was no longer a good thing to have because of the Black Panthers. So some of these things, actually, some of the policies that I'm trying to work on have a racist history, and I'm trying to correct that. I'm trying to fix that. It sounds like racism is something you want to correct too. So I'm really glad we're on the same page.
Which is ironic because that's some of the things that I told her.
She kept talking though, it sounds like, and she couldn't get off of it.
Yeah, like I said, once we got to the edge of that cliff, we jumped and there was no bungee or anything. I was like, oh, we're free falling. But yeah, I mean, even throughout the conversation, because there'd be times where she's like, that's not racism. I was like, but if a police officer were to pull you over, I mean, we talked about more than just guns. Some of it was prison reform, things like that. And I was like, if a cop were to pull a minority over because of their skin color, I was like, without just cause, I was like, they don't have the right to just pull you over for no reason. And that's what she kind of said. And I was like, no, I was like, if they're just pulling you over because of your skin color, that is racist. I was like, and that shouldn't fly. And why you would support that is beyond me. I was like, they shouldn't be able to pull anybody over for any reason or without just reason. And, and then that, I would tie it in and whatnot. And, I talked about, gun laws that came about after slaves were freed. And I was like, it's not just like a systemic racism that happened. I was like, but there's also a class warfare that's going on now with gun laws. I was like, so even if you're white, I was like, it doesn't even matter what your skin color is now. If you're just poverty level with some of the gun laws they're passing, it makes it very hard for you to exercise your Second Amendment rights because, like with what is it, 2139 in Washington, where you're going to have to pay these exorbitant taxes to go and take training and all these things every I believe 2 years. And I was like, for somebody that's living paycheck to paycheck, flipping burgers at McDonald's or whatever the case, I was like, which is, is it honest living? I don't knock anybody for it, but if that's what you're doing, you're probably not rolling in dough, and having to jump through hoops like that makes it hard to exercise your Second Amendment rights. I was like, so there is even a class warfare going on now with gun rights or gun laws.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing to bring up because like when we talk about the history of gun control, right, we're looking at things like Jim Crow, which were elements of that, and it was to keep a class of people from owning guns. In that case, it was a racial group, right? But yeah, as they continue to levy fines and taxes and tax stamp systems and all of these things, mandatory training classes that you have to purchase that you can't just own or you can't just get from the state even, as they continue to posit all of these things, paying for your background checks and things like that, that is absolutely classist, right? That's discrimination based off of income, because if you're rich, that's not a punishment, right? But if you're poor, it is. So yeah, absolutely, I'm with you on that. It seems odd to me that having that conversation that she wouldn't see that, and I would almost wonder if it was because of the like contentious feelings around like George Zimmerman and just that case, and that's what that seems to be what set this off. But yeah, it's interesting.
That's what I was thinking, because normally, like I said, half hour, if I'm lucky, an hour conversation like this with somebody, and normally I chalk it up to you back a wild animal into a corner, the only thing it has left to do is lash out, because that's, like I said, that's normally what I find after talking to somebody normally and rebuttaling and making valid arguments for everything that they're saying. At some point they kind of get frustrated, I find, and when they can't come up with anything else, they just kind of resort to those things. But this, like I said, this was very different because we were just going along, everything was smooth, there was no feelings about it. It was very open and flowing, and then, like I said, that we hit that cliff, and but yeah, there was obviously feelings on the Zimmerman case where in it went back to the whole race thing. She felt that Zimmerman was blatantly racist, which I told her, I was like, I can't say 100%. I was like, he very well could have been blatantly racist. I was like, but here's a couple ways on how perhaps it wasn't necessarily about skin color and was actually about these things that he said were the reason for stopping Trayvon Martin and all those things.
Yeah, some of my favorite conversations this year in the era of Black Lives Matter have been those where it's like, I do point out, hey, antebellum, your people of color's rights were pursued and denied. 68, another example, brings us to the modern era. Yeah, guys, like, it's institutional racism. And now we can point out to you how something like controlling your ability to defend yourself is yet further oppression. We're not down with that, y'all. So go ahead and jump over this direction, though you may have some growing pains while you're doing it. So yeah, we're with you. We're not against you. And check this out. Here's a reason that you have a genuine feeling of being discriminated against. You have been.
And like going back to the Trayvon Martin thing, like I understand I prefaced it with, hey, I'm not trying to defend George Zimmerman here. As you know, I'm just trying to give a couple arguments on another point of view. And I told her, I was like, because I don't know George Zimmerman, I've never talked to him. The only thing that I really have to go off of are media reports, things like that. I was like, so, and I understand why she might take it as a defense of him. And that's where you jump into the issue where if somebody's got feelings tied up into something, they're not hearing you clearly. They only hear the one little snippet that sets them off, and now you're chasing the ball down the hill.
So I think maybe I was just going to say maybe the trick there would be to ask her, so what do you think the self-defense law should be? So because we know what happened with the court outcome, despite all of the publicity on that case, besides everyone virtually unanimous agreement that Zimmerman shouldn't have approached Trayvon. How would you see the laws changed involving that interaction? Let's have a conversation about that protects rights, but then also prevents those incidents, because that's not a gun control conversation. That's just a how do we view self-defense, and how do we make sure we view self-defense within an ethical lens, right? So this is kind of, it can be apolitical if we're willing to have an apolitical conversation about it. Like, what do you think should change? Because there's some extents of stand your ground that are really good and really beneficial. There's other things that we could see, like, hey, we don't want you to just go around picking fights with people. So there's elements to this where we might need to account for things in law. Like, what do you think is going on? And that might have been an opportunity to take it. I'm really excited for this conversation. I'm really happy. Actually, I wanted to follow up on DJ's question. Did you wind up getting that second date, or how is that going?
Oh no, we never got to the first date. Before this conversation, that was being discussed at least, but I'm pretty sure I'm blocked on everything now, so I'm not too worried about it. But going back to the stand your ground thing, it's funny that you mentioned that, because there is something that was said. I'm trying to process the whole conversation again, but what I do remember is something was said about self-defense, and I had mentioned stand your ground, and she went, "Oh, that's what that means." I was like, "Well, what do you think it meant?" She's like, "I was never really sure." I was like, "Well, yeah, it just means that you don't have to retreat. You have the right to defend yourself." Sorry, my dog's kicking me. I was like, "You got the right to defend yourself. You don't have a duty to retreat." I was like, that's all it is. And again, you got that media bias affecting her, where she's like, stand your ground is this terrible thing. And once I told her, all it's saying is you've got a right to defend yourself. You don't have to retreat. I was like, because Pennsylvania used to have a duty to retreat, and Pennsylvania's duty to retreat actually said that you would have to be cornered with no reasonable means of escape. And before you carried out whatever act of self-defense that you were going to do, whether it was shooting somebody, stabbing them, whatever it was, you have to announce to that person, "I'm going to shoot you now," or "I'm going to stab you now." And so I told her, I was like, you don't have to do that now. I was like, because, we have a castle doctrine here in PA, and, that's no longer the case. And after that, that's another point where I think she really saw, or where I really saw a sway with her, because it seemed like she perked up a little bit more and realized that, oh, stand your ground just means I get to defend myself. It's not something where, people are just going out and picking fights and shooting each other, or some ridiculous thing like that.
Right. Stand your ground. Another way to describe it would be that you don't have to, like a police officer, state your intent or whatever as a victim, so that, it's not like if you're being raped, that you have to yell loud enough for someone to hear. Like, you don't have to be capable or able or interested to do that before you choose an option. It also would say that, well, anyway, it definitely was a thing to limit stuff and create a situation where they had a perception that everything was honorable or whatever, and that by making a law that said you can't use lethal force without warning, that somehow that was more honorable or something. It was old-fashioned concept that was eventually removed from law. But I was going to recommend also that in a situation like that one, potentially saying where you're in a position where the other, I don't know, there's probably a word for this, where the other person puts you in a position of needing to justify, or what's the word, like defend something that you had no intention and you have no alliance with, no allegiance to, you had no intention of defending, or you don't agree with it. So if that's the case, then what about saying that's interesting and I agree, that seems whatever. I mean, on the surface, that seems exactly like what you're saying, but I have nothing, no interest, no info about it. Let's go research together. And in that particular circumstance, there are organizations, right? There's groups that have existed for years that are gun owners that might have insight into that, either in Florida or whatever, CCW, people who know the law. You might find lawyer groups. There's different groups that are going to know. There's the NAAGR, National Association of, no, it's, how the hell does that one come out? Anyway, the
North American Association for Gun Rights.
No, not that one, not NAGR. The those are a bunch of jerks in Colorado that use the confusion of the multiple California organizations to make a bunch of money. I've never seen them participate in anything. Now I'm thinking of, I'm going to look on it because I'm not listening. But anyway, there's organizations that you could go to together and then get insight from people who have awareness, and then together discover whatever the answer is. You know what I'm saying? And then if nothing else, then you've discovered something together, and that's something they have in common. But you also have discovered an answer or a solution. So it's not like you're having to defend the solution. You just discovered it. Now you can talk about the discovery or the situation. You know what I mean? It's like, not like it's an accusatory thing. It's like, okay, we're both over here and there's the answer. Now we can talk about the answer as a third party. And it's not like I have to stand between you and the answer, or I have to somehow be in possession of the answer. In that particular circumstance where it went from like Trayvon Martin, what, because he had a gun, somehow gun owners have to be associated with the guy? Like, and his decisions, like, crying out loud, what if he had a knife? Like, then it would just be like something completely different. But because there's a firearm involved, like, now it's a gun owner's issue. Like, I don't have nothing to do with that. Nothing about that has anything to do with me, except for that, the guy wears shoes too. All shoe owners have to be associated with that guy.
Well, what brought us onto that was talking about self-defense and self-defense statistics and things like that. Which she said, George Zimmerman claimed that he shot Trayvon Martin in self-defense, and I was like, yes, but you're pulling out one anomaly out of millions. I was like, well, told her, I believe the CDC and FBI estimate anywhere from like 500,000 to several million instances per year where a firearm is used to defend somebody's life. But I was like, most of those cases don't even involve a shot being fired. I was like, but even if we take it at the lowest number given by the CDC and FBI, I was like, we'll just say 500,000. I was like, you're still pulling out one anomaly out of 500,000. I was like, but that was years ago. I was like, so if we take that 500,000 over multiple years, I was like, you're still talking about millions of other instances. I was like, so you're talking about one anomaly. I was like, and even still, I was like, we have to say it was self-defense because it went to court. Zimmerman was acquitted. I was like, so whether you like it, whether I like it, or anybody else, I was like, and he wasn't convicted in court. Maybe in the court of the public eye, he's guilty, but in the court of law, he was found to be acting in self-defense.
So let's see. Enrique was saying I've had fellow lefties figure about the same about stand your ground as a reason to pick fights and then use lethal force. This came from a martial arts guy. I think I've heard of that back in the day, not recently, but I think back in the day before there was CCW in Arizona, everybody would just carry because it was a misdemeanor to carry. Everybody would just carry, period, and no one ever it was never an issue. But I guess technically, if someone would have been patted down or frisked or something, I was called, they would have got a misdemeanor potentially. But otherwise, people carried or whatever, and that would be the thing. Like, we'd have conversations back in those days because the stuff wasn't common. It didn't exist in every state. It was only in a few states that even applied or whatever. But those were those were the Petri dishes. Those were the experiments happening. And I can remember that. Like, okay, stand your ground is like a bully tactic. And now you can say, I can start something and you can't push me back. I get to stand my ground, which is basically from the beginning and from every angle incorrect. It's simply a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a non-definition used by people who are against it to cause confusion. But there was never any confusion in any of the laws, and it was only a divisive definition, if that's an actual thing. At least that's what I believe.
Yeah, I've never I'm trying to think of a single self-defense instructor I've ever studied under outside of a military, law enforcement, security type context where you have to deal with what's in front of you. I'm trying to think of any self-defense instructor, anyone that would say you don't have an ethical duty to retreat. Now, that is different from a legal duty to retreat, right? But like, if you can avoid a conflict, why wouldn't you? Right, you win 100% of the gunfights that you're not in.
You're saying the martial arts core belief is to not fight if you can help it.
Right, and I don't know. I haven't met any of any firearms instructors that are like, yeah, let's go out here and just look for fights. Like, I've never heard that. I've heard people say like, I'm going to go I'm going to go stand and secure something. I'm going to go do the right thing and stand up for something. But I've never heard anyone go and say, this gives me an excuse to go out there and look for it.
There's a documentary. There's a couple of dojos in California called Cobra Kai. And yeah, they would use their karate powers to go out and harass. And it's horrible. No, but I hear what you're saying. Like, in other words, they're coming from a point of view of let's try to not fight anyway, and then apply that to law and force.
Yeah, those Cobra Kai guys were really big assholes to my buddy Daniel.
I didn't want to use that because I like the new show where they're the good guys and that guy was the a-hole. Have you seen the new TV show?
I haven't, but I heard it's awesome.
I have, and I'm so confused by it because it is so strange to have Cobra Kai be the good guys. It throws me off.
I never liked that movie when it first came out. I hated it. I really like Shue. Like, Elizabeth Shue is amazing, but that movie was just horrible. I didn't like it. So years later, whenever the internet probably happened, a long time ago, somebody came up with the idea that that dude was really the bad guy, and they were just minding their business, and this guy steals their girlfriend and knocks them down in the park, and then sends this older sensei after him and cheats at the thing and wins. So it's when you look at it that way, I like that movie a lot better. But that was just all theory. What was I going to watch it on VHS or whatever? So yeah, now that they made this show, I'm like, oh man, I love it. And the fact that they're all playing with it, all the actors, the original actors are willing to play with it is great. But actually they're making it neither one of them are bad, right? But anyways, now playing around, that is a thing. But like I said, I haven't heard in a while. So if people are bringing that up, I think it should be a fairly easy one because it's just really a clarification thing. Once you understand it, I think the bigger one is the difference between castle doctrine and stand your ground. For me, that one, when I tried to differentiate between them, that became a little bit harder to splice that hair.
Yeah, I think the easy way to remember it is castle doctrines for your house, stand your ground is for outside your house. Overwhelmingly.
But castle doctrine will apply in your vehicle often, and like if you're at a hotel, it'll apply to where you're at. Like it's kind of travels with you, and for those reasons, it can be whatever. But I think it's more of you have the right to exist, which would be castle doctrine, versus you don't have to walk away from stand your ground. Which I mean, those circles would cover each other in areas, but they are technically a little different.
Yeah, that's it exactly. And you and I both have the experience, and probably others in this conversation, with being in like an RV, or if you're a rubber tramp, that is castle doctrine for you. It is your house and home, and your right to protect and defend it should not be exclusive of a permanent structure.
So then, Reiki said again, DJ correct, my friend always picks the extreme reasons to deny the right to defend herself. He never trusts everyday people. Man, I can't wait. And I'd have to hold back all the damn time, but that's why I have to do a daily show, and there's 1,200 episodes of it, because that never trust everyday people part is a big deal. And every time, I don't have to do it very often. I can't remember last time, but it was recently. I had to go walk around downtown somewhere, and where was I going? Anyway, I was walking around with traffic, and I don't do it very often. So it really is different for me to walk around on a sidewalk without any kind of railings or nothing, and traffic, a bunch of cars going back and forth. It just doesn't happen in Tucson very often. And where it does happen in Tucson, I ain't walking. I'm driving through there, right? So I just don't experience it very often. But every single day that a pedestrian exists, and you multiply that by every pedestrian, and then you get to flip the coin over and multiply it by everybody who drives past a pedestrian, we have ultimate faith in each other, and we have ultimate ability to not kill each other. And so many things could change that. Accidents, inadvertency, deliberate stuff, acts of nature. So many things can mess with that. But there's just as many guns as there are firearms. People walk around with firearms. People use firearms or walk around with firearms in public. Like, there's so many situations that could happen with a pedestrian in a car and don't. How do we get that across to people who say they don't trust people with guns? Like, F you, you trust everybody. F you, you have a massive faith in each other. You just don't realize it, because a couple of people don't want that to be enlightened. They don't want you to think about the ultimate faith you have in a salad bar, that somebody isn't going to poison that salad bar. Like, how many salad bars have you walked near, around, or past that didn't have a guard watching that you didn't poison it? For crying out loud, we have ultimate faith in each other. We all love each other. None of us want to kill each other. It only happens by accident, or when some of you love each other so fucking much that you want to kill each other. And that's two people almost always. And you know what I'm saying? Like, there's that weird shit. But that's just going to happen. We have a country of 360 million people. How many salad bars were there? How many escalators and stairways were there where nobody dropped like a rock on somebody off of an overhead? Like, there's so many places that we interact with everyday people. It's how do we get that across to this one particular? Think about how many knives are out there, and there's no knivings. Come on, like, there's just so many things, and they're anyway. I'll quit harping on it. I think I'm in.
Well, hey, G, the thing that occurred to me right away is one of the first transgressions against that kind of inviolate trust we have in my memory was when the Tylenol scare, the poisoning. And that was just one of those things where everyone responded with, why would anyone do that? And it ended up being this national and international phenomenon. So yeah, that happens. It's the real world.
Let's talk about that. So does anybody remember what DJ's talking about? Oh, snap. See? So barbecue, you know what we're talking about?
Sorry, what was the question?
About the Tylenol poisonings?
No, I can't say I do. Like,
okay, so
I heard about it being terrible for your stomach or whatever, or your liver, but that's about it.
No, it's something different. Back in the day, this was in the early 80s, I think. Early or mid 80s, or maybe the 70s. I don't know. It was when I was a little kid. Somebody went in, you know how when you open up a jar or a bottle today, well, I say today because you don't know, but whenever you open up something, there's a piece of paper there and you have to bust through that piece of paper to get into whatever it is you just bought a bottle of and you already had a cap on it. But you still got to bust through a piece of paper to get into the pills or the milk or whatever it is. That is because of the thing called the Tylenol poison. What was it called? You said it better. What was it called? The Tylenol something? Or was it just called Tylenol? Well, whatever. There's because some asshole went into a thing, opened up a Tylenol bottle and dropped in a piece of poison or whatever he did. And then he closed the bottle and put it back on the shelf, right? That happened. And it was like in the Chicago area. And it happened. And I forget, it was like 4 bottles or something. And somebody died and they found 4 bottles. And that was an act of terrorism. So DJ is saying, what about it? I happen to think that that is an important piece, a super important piece of history for this country. And you just happen to hit on it. It has nothing to do with guns, really, but we're going to hit it because it's a super critical one and nobody knows what it is, I guess. So some guy, as an act of terrorism, decided to go into a store and drop a thing. And I think he went to multiple stores. The only thing similar was that he dropped it into Tylenols. And I don't know how much, I don't care about this stuff, so I never researched it. I'm just going off of my own memory as a little kid. He did something to screw with Tylenol. Now, I remember that the effect of it was that we got those little paper things. So there's a do not tamper seal on everything now. That's literally because of that. Now, later on, there's an awesome dude back in the day before there wasn't SEAL teams. The Navy was just, driving us all around in the water or whatever they do. And keeping the beaches clean. I don't know what the Navy did. So the Navy was doing whatever. And then stuff started to happen. World War II or whatever, they had some frogmen, right, that would do stuff underwater in the Navy. And then we started to have terrorism. So they took this one dude called Richard Marcinko and asked him to make SEAL Team 6. And he was the guy who created the counterterrorism part of the Navy called SEAL Team 6 and SEALs, right? He evolved, well, I don't know if he personally, but that was part of the evolution of SEALs from UDT, from what I understand. So this guy's pretty cool. And he's been doing stuff since Vietnam. I think he's still kicking. I've met him a couple of times. He's a cool dude. He wrote a book called Leadership Secrets of the Rogue Warrior. And in that book, he describes this whole situation. So it's one of the reasons I'm passionate about it. It's an interesting thing that he used as an insight. So this is a book written by the guy who invented SEAL Team 6, a guy who was #1 wanted guy in the Navy, at least in Vietnam. Hardcore motherfucker, gets out of the Navy. Well, in the Navy, he goes to college to be in business and stuff. And then after the Navy, writes books and goes into business. So he's not in a slouch. And he's writing a book for people who are in business based on his experiences and stuff. And his take on that Tylenol situation was that was it Johnson & Johnson had a decision to make. They could either cower to terrorism or allow terrorism to change the playing field, change the world. Literally, they had in their hands, and I don't know if they understood the significance or not, but he explains it this way, that they had, and I'm explaining it probably poorly, but they had the potential to change the direction. They had a stick in the water there where they could decide to go left or right. And they decided to nonstop, hands down, tell every store, throw away your Tylenol, we'll take care of this. They put the safety thing on. They said, nobody has to worry. We took care of this. They lost tons of money. And in the effect, that terrorism has never been able to take place again. So that was a pivotal thing in history where the industry decided to take action, lost some money initially. One company kind of took the brunt of it. And I might be summarizing it poorly because I'm not a business person. I don't know everything. But from that angle, I really like that when they brought it up, that because I think that we could use that occasionally to remember that you don't have to fall on the sword. You just have to make a decision that doesn't necessarily at the time seem like a crucial or critical one, but can be. And let's give credit to the people that took difficult decisions, because I don't think that was an easy decision for them to make. And it wasn't the obvious decision, but it stopped that kind of terrorism from being a thing for the rest of time. And Walt, you might have more insight on that kind of it if you've heard of it from that angle.
Actually, I haven't. It's really interesting because with my background, I've seen most anti-terror procedure as how would I say it? Security theater, I think is the term, where they want you to feel really secure. But there are some basic measures, right? Some really fundamental measures, like in this case, applying different seals to your Tylenol bottles that sound fairly common sense and would prevent a lot of tampering. And I mean, and that's something where too, like we saw a similar phenomenon, I think last year, right? Where we would see people open up the jar of peanut butter, or open up the thing of ice cream and lick it, right? And so we see more food seals come out. And yeah, and a lot of the time, like, you know, and actually maybe this is actually very on topic with guns, right? Because we think about our arms and how we equip ourselves, especially like for me, 2A for me is about self-defense. I think that I think very much so as a shooter, as a self-defense practitioner, and as like kind of a practical use in that regard, because I'm not a hunter and I'm not into other kinds of shooting. Like I'll shoot targets and stuff, but we think so much about like that scenario, and that scenario is maybe like a 1 in 8 lifetimes. You know, you need to use a firearm to defend yourself statistically, right? From like a concealed carry perspective, that was one of the things when I took my class that they were telling us. But then if I turn that around and I look at other things, right? Things like clean water are everyday security needs. Things like uncontaminated food are everyday security needs. And a lot of the time, when we're talking about how we arm ourselves or how we prepare ourselves just for going about the day, that fire extinguisher might be more critical, you know? And so having that mindset and being aware of where different pieces of our self-defense toolkit fit in, and our different protective measures, just to defend things like food and to defend things like our homes from a fire, what have you. Like, I think it's cool to kind of take that in and appreciate that for a little bit. There probably the advent of modern plumbing probably has saved more lives than modern medicine when you think about it, you know?
No, that's definitive. That's absolute. That's true. You know, and like one of the things that, you know, I mean, this is a gross exaggeration, but we don't need to stand our ground in the produce aisle because of the way somebody's handling our stuff. But even pre-COVID, I had several friends who would only buy fruits and vegetables if they were in a sealed container. And now some of them were like, you know, germaphobes or whatever, but some of them had genuine concerns. Now that we've had to deal with that and ice cream licking and stupid shit like that, it is sometimes, I mean, you guys remember before we had sneeze guards on buffets and salad bars? That was a thing. And now we're like so protected, and now we're used to seeing all these plexi barriers everywhere. I wonder if it isn't just going to extend out, and that is the new deal, just like tamper-proof bottles.
I don't think so. Not necessarily. Costs a lot of money. I mean, and people who say that kind of stuff, or that just assume, or that, you know, fatalist or whatever, aren't putting together how much it costs to create all that stuff. Like, you know, the masks were fairly simple. You can chop up a bunch of T-shirts and take a bunch of Tyvek paper and turn it into them or whatever. But, you know, to just start creating stuff, the businesses are closed down now, so it's pretty simple to get the few businesses that are open, the type of barriers that we're talking about. But I mean, I guess we have enough resources to do that. I just don't see it being like on top of everybody's priorities as soon as it's not an issue anymore. I mean, again, do you really think that this was something that diseases have changed over time, and this is the evolution of a disease that not only was able to attack the human body in a new, different way, but also able to attack society in a new, different way? I mean, viruses aren't alive, but they're not alive either, right? They're unique. So are they finding new ways to attack us, and this is the evolution of them in a societal way, you know, which I guess it could be, you know, or was this something that was used to leverage to attain other goals? And if that is the case, you know, are they going to change their hold on this, or are they going to adjust the level? I mean, I guess it's possible that they would just, hey, the muzzle worked, like, let's chain them up too. But I just don't, you know, if it is, it would, I don't know. I guess we're going to find out, but Enrique says, fascinating idea, though. All right, well, so we've been going on all kinds of topics so far. The first hour has been pretty crazy. Enrique's being part of the show out there. Thank you. It says there's 8 other people out there. We saw Ozzy saying wax on earlier. It's probably waxing polish on that holster and then wiping that wax off of there. Oh wait, let's go down here. Oh, okay, cool. The first one was for the Bushmaster thing in 1972. Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't want to totally derail this conversation from the last one on the other channel where we were talking about that the history of braces, but this one looks to be a pistol brace model that works like the shockwave brace in a contemporary sense with how the pistol would be held. It could be intermittently shouldered, but it's designed to kind of wrap around the arm so that it holds it steady. It looks like. I don't know if you can throw up a picture of it on the screen, but
Oh, I thought I am. No, yeah, this was Bushmaster when Bushmaster started before it moved to Maine. So when they first started, they were in like Tennessee or something, and they were called Gwin firearms. This is a bullpup. Now they might call it that because it was new at the time, but that's only because I'll try to get a better picture of it. The shape of it isn't designed to be a brace. It was just what they said in describing it, but it exists because of the shape that the AR receiver is, or at least the shape that the receiver needs to be in order for the bolt to travel. So the bolt needs to travel, right? The chamber is here and this is the bolt. It needs to travel back here. Now this one never succeeded because of lots of reasons, but basically that's just the room in the receiver for the thing to travel. And then they left a little bit of room underneath for the selector. And then they put some rods going forward for the trigger. And for whatever reason, this one doesn't have a trigger guard. But anyway, it's not so much a brace as a bullpup. And they may have described it as being like able to be braced, but that's because they were trying to sell that. They were trying to say, hey, here's a reason why we made this gun. They were trying to make all the advantages of a bullpup. And the company that did this ended up turning into Bushmaster. So that is the first Bushmaster. And in order to describe it differently than the first AR-15 pistols made by Bushmaster in later years, I think we call it the Bushmaster arm. But anyway, so I hear what you're saying, but I don't think anybody would count this as a brace. It wasn't.
Yeah, I want a cleaner example for sure. But if this is if it's marketed as a pistol, and it's supposedly allegedly designed, albeit terribly, I don't know. I'd count it as like one of those things. It's like technically correct, which might be the best form of correct, but it's also one of the most useless forms of correct sometimes.
Well, again, they were trying to comply with they were trying to build within the compliance of crazy laws. So when they were building that thing, but that was built at a time when the AR-15 platform was still not cherished. It was still kind of different materials, aluminum and plastic, which hadn't been used in firearms almost at all. Definitely modularity was not used in anything. Like we had interchangeable parts. We're okay with that. But modularity? What the fuck? Like maybe for pipes and shit, but come on, this is a gun we're talking about here. You don't screw a barrel on a gun. So, we're talking a paradigm shift when the AR-15 came around. And now you look where we are today, where people are totally comfortable printing a receiver for the thing, right? Well, we didn't go from one to the other because of some genie blinked their eyes. It's because shit like that, where they tried and innovated, and that was a massive failure. Holy moly, did people hate that gun when it came out? I mean, it was obscure. No one even knew about it. And then because there was so few of them made, but once books and magazines started showing it around, we would look at it at like the lunch table in high school or whatever and that kind of shit. And we'd laugh at it because it was, not normal, or it wasn't going in the direction of the trends. But anyway, so then when the internet came around, it got kind of a quick laugh at in the forums. And then every once in a while, you'll see somebody mention it. But because there's so few of them, I don't even think I've seen too many videos or anything over the years. I don't even think I've seen them in museums very often. There's just not a lot of them. And it was definitely, the only reason I know about this much is because it was hard to research that part of Bushmaster for the 50 states of 2A. Did I ever send you that book?
You haven't sent it to me. But I'd love to. If you have a PDF, yeah, just email it to me.
No, fuck no. I'm gonna get you a copy. So send me an address that's good to email you an email or something, and I'll send you a care package with some stuff. But anyway, that's the only reason I know about it.
Did that predate the Steyr?
No idea.
The-
Like I say, I only know about it because I
Okay.
happened to research it for the book, and then I quit researching it because I really don't like bullpups, and I don't really care. It was it's a bug under my bonnet because I don't know why or all about Bushmaster in that little couple of year segment before it went to Maine. But I'll be satisfied if somebody does a video and explains it. Like I don't need to go
I
research
think it might have. I'm just like, I'm checking Wikipedia really quickly, and it looks like the Steyr AUG came out around 78, and it looks like this Bushmaster arm pistol came out around 72. So
Well, that's interesting. But Steyr's totally different. They're bullpup like a bullpup. This thing is, let's try to make an AR into something else.
yeah, it's just like
Right.
wonky, like weird pistol, not a bullpup type thing going down. That's functionally a bullpup, but yeah, it's this weird quagmire of a gun. It's kind of fascinating.
Nobody was interested in the whole stock of the M16 or the AR-15, the way that the receiver extension goes out. People call it the receiver tube or whatever, but the receiver extension goes out and contains the recoil spring. And then how the bolt carrier itself has to, the bolt is a little thing inside of the carrier. The carrier has to shove out into that receiver extension. And then there has to be more extension for the spring to collapse up into. And as soon as that came out, normally that's all hidden in your stock, but that's fine. But the stock was really long and everybody wanted a collapsible stock. So immediately it's evident that it's there. The first couple where they started making that shorter, you'd blow your screws out of your lower receiver because it was too much pressure back there. So that's the thing, is whenever they figured out the parts, there was no, what do we want to say, like standards yet, or any kind of trends. So in those early days of having AR-15s and maybe parts kits or maybe just armorers going, wow, like back in the day, you just had steel and wood. And now there's plastic and aluminum, and I can actually cut aluminum on my machines here, and that doesn't cost me an arm and a leg. Maybe I can start playing with this. And I think that's why these things look kind of half, 3/4 of the way made instead of all the way thought out. Anyway, so any other topics tonight? Or I guess I was introducing Wields out there.
Hi, Wield. I was going to say, did we want to talk about how we research topics for 2As? Because I know,
Go ahead.
I know how I do it, and I'm interested because I don't feel like I have a super ingenious way of doing it. Actually, I feel like it's a very blockhead, like low IQ. Anybody can do this. But basically, I jump on Google and I click on the news tab, and I just type in the key search words that I'm looking for. So since I'm interested in debating anti-gunners and things like that, I'll use terms like gun violence, I'll use terms like gun control, and I'll look for articles that appear there, and I'll just filter the news to be the last 24 hours or the last week or whatever until I find something worth addressing. Because you'll get a lot of blogs and op-eds and things like that, and those aren't always worth it to address, in my opinion. Like I'll get a lot of content from the NRA, and I don't feel like all the NRA content is just bad. Like there's a lot of good content that they have, and I don't want to, I give credit where it's due, but it's just not, I'm not interested in engaging with the same old in the same way. Like I don't want to put out a video where I'm just like, yeah, I agree with that. Like to me, that would be pretty boring. So I try to find more local stuff. So I might search by like localities. So in this case, today, I just thought, hey, I'll type in city council and gun control, and I want to see because I covered Dublin, I wonder if there's other cities in California where Giffords has them in their sites. And then I found Palo Alto. And then it turns out that Palo Alto was following suit from Redwood City. And so this is like a whole thing where Giffords is going around trying to flip city councils. And there's actually a bigger story here that I'm yet to really cover with that. But that's kind of the play that we're seeing. And so it's like, oh, interesting. It's like when we start to localize the searches and we start to see patterns as we observe news over the course of time, it becomes really easy to, I think, like determine what's going on, if that makes sense, as far as what other political actors are covering and also what certain media outlets are covering too. Do those media outlets have narratives? Those types of things will kind of reveal that to you, I think, over time. So that's kind of my take. I don't know if you do anything different, but that's what I'll do. I'll go to DuckDuckGo if Google doesn't give me anything. So
I do it 100% differently for sure. But then another thing that it sounds like what that approach would give you, or at least offer, is some insight into angles, vulnerabilities in their strategies, angles that we could use, like, cracks in their positions or whatever. Because if they are doing similar stuff and you're in a position where you can see not just what they've done, but what they continue to do and patterns and whatever, then aren't you going to see their play?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting to now. So seeing what Giffords is doing in California and seeing that they have a massive leg up, and also seeing that I'm an unemployed copywriter, like one thing that I'm thinking about right now is, hey, what if I came up with 3 or 4 different email templates and then I could put those out? So then all you have to do is find out how to contact your city council and then just email them, right? And that way you're not wasting any time if you're, because other people are working and they have lives and they have jobs outside of the Second Amendment, I know. So let's make participation in 2A as easy as possible, right? So let me do that groundwork for you. And if I can give you the words and you just want to make some tweaks and make it your own, cool. And then go ahead and send that off to city council. And then, hey, guess what? We can do the same thing for the state when the state is eyeing a bill, or we can do the same thing for the federal government when, for Congress or for the Senate when they're eyeing a bill at the national level, right? So like it gives us a way to kind of see, and then I think quickly develop a counterattack that's useful. So I like doing it like that because that's kind of where my mind's at, but I'm really interested in how you do it too.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that, DJ. DJ, sorry, Walt. Because I was on a live chat tonight where we were actually talking about, writing your legislators and saying, hey, I'm not happy with this, and talking about all the people that just go to the GOA or NRA or any of the big groups that just have this form letter that's getting sent over to the ATF saying, hey, I'm not happy that you're trying to get rid of pistol braces now. And how the ATF and our legislators and all that look at those things and just kind of, oh, well, that's all from that group. Great. And while, a bunch of raindrops, create the flood, all that, but it still is going to take a ton of those, as opposed to when somebody actually takes the time to write a personalized letter. And, then we were talking about the people that just get on there and they're like, hey, F you, ATF, and Civil War and cold dead hands, and all the cliche crap, and how that doesn't gain us any favor, and it's kind of the stereotypical stuff that they expect. And I had mentioned, hey, if you're one of those people that feels the need to, cold dead hands and all that, and you can't come out with something more thoughtful and useful, please, by all means, do those form letters. And I can't remember who had mentioned it. I think it was Nighthawk. Medic said, in fact, if there's somebody that can make or is well spoken enough and has the ability to make several letters that people can kind of use, so it's not just the form letters from the big organization, so it looks a little bit more personalized, that could go a long way too. So it's just ironic that you're mentioning that now, because there was a handful of us talking about that exact thing, but it's one of those things where who one has the time, who's got the knowledge and know-how and that well spoken, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to identify content needs for writing, if you guys have anything that needs writing, get my email from G or for myself. I'll post it in private chat here. But yeah, feel free to hit me up, and I have no problem taking a crack at anything. So if you see an issue popping up, by all means, let me know. And yeah, like I'll absolutely write a letter that can be used as a template and made your own. And if there's like a little bit of research or something that goes into it, this type of stuff I'm pretty quick at. It takes me like 5-10 minutes to do for the most part. So yeah, feel free to lean on me, man. I'm more than happy to help with that.
And if you want me to throw down with my technical writing history and practice, I'm more than willing to contribute anything that you might need, or proofing or anything like that if you're in a hurry. And one of the things about what you're doing, first of all, freaking awesome. Second, please have what might be like reasonable expectations. People just won't do shit. And like, I don't know if you're probably aware, or at least would understand that, before email, which makes it infinitely easier, there used to be organizations used to send out those form letters where you would just, do the inside address, and they'd have it already set up and even postage paid sometimes. So all you had to do was rubber stamp the damn thing. And now that we have email, it's direct. You can click through, do this. And if you want to be lazy, you just throw on an e-signature and send it on your way. But what's going to be key, and I would ask you to encourage people to do when you're using those things, is to always do at least one paragraph. Now, they can compose that and keep that as a saved text file and just insert it each time. But offer personalization, because if you have something additional to that form, in some cases, they have to read it into record. So if you have something specific to say other than the generic, they'll read that instead of saying, "Oh, we have 300 respondents who said this."
Just don't put the or in there, and I'm with you. You don't have to just send one thing, and you can send. There's value in sending the boilerplate, and what you talked about with how they used to send out. They still do. I get tons of pieces of paper in the mail from 2A groups still. But when you get pieces of paper that, like you say, you just stamp and send in, that has value and weight also, not just literally, but when they collect a bunch of pieces of paper that are obvious from the same source, that shows the weight and the significance and the response that organization has. So you're helping that organization to some extent have reputation and clout with whoever it is that's responsible for that. And like you say, it's in the record. So from that point on, anybody who's actually doing valid research is going to go in there. The political strategists that actually have the money behind them that are worried about this stuff are going to go in there and go, okay, this one, group we mentioned earlier that I'm not affiliated with, they're just a bunch of noise, and they collect millions of dollars from the industry, and all they do is nothing. And then we got this other organization over here that collects millions of dollars, and they attack us on the Supreme Court level. They do grassroots stuff. They're doing this and that, so they're aware of what the organizations are doing and all that. So it's worth doing the boilerplate stuff, but sending in your own, I'm not going to disagree or agree, but I'm just going to say do it both. Don't do one or the other.
Yeah, and I guess, what I should have been more clear about was I just meant on those boilerplates, you could add, a personalized paragraph and even have stored to the side your personal view sort of thing. So yeah, I meant it to be in as part of the whole instead of a tandem exercise. You're absolutely right.
Kind of
I agree too, G.
I've chopped some other stuff off just to make it like more to the point, and also because if they do get them, that it is technically different than whatever the boilerplate. So I'll use the boilerplate to send and to facilitate the email. I'll just rip all the text that they put in there out pretty much and just say, I am against bill whatever. I'll do something real simple, but use their infrastructure for it. But go ahead. There's no right or wrong. I'm just saying do both. We're never limited to just write one. And I guess the worst case, the people that are defeatist will say, oh, they don't even look. Okay, then what did it cost you to send an email? You've strengthened your ability to do it, and the people that do look now have to deal with you. And then the people that go, oh, all they do is throw it in a big pile. They don't read every single one. Just what DJ said. Every once in a while, they have to read it, or every once in a while, they just pick one randomly. And if it's yours, it could be the boilerplate one, or if it's yours, it could be the one with the boilerplate and something important that's separate or additional.
Yeah, say like when we were trying to get House Bill 1747 and 2440 passed here in PA. First I went and did the GOA's form letter, just did the click, boom, send. Then I went back in and I did my own. And then after I got done doing that, I picked up the phone.
There you go. All right, so I'm going to go back to what I typed in here so I didn't forget it. One of the things that I watched today, and I mentioned it, it's in the description of this video, the thing about how to deal with stress in the news or something. It's way towards the bottom, so it's not gun related. But anyway, watch that video if you got some time. I think it's like 10, 20 minutes. I skipped through it a little bit and gets to the good parts, and I watched it a few times because I really like her rundown. She's got like 200,000 subs or more, so she's a known YouTube therapist or some shit. So anyway, she's brought up the idea that we're mammals and got physiological whatever processes in our brains, right? You know, our brains do stuff, our eyes do stuff, we salivate when we see stuff that we want to eat, right? So there's ways to screw with that, and they can physically put MSG in the food, or they can make a really appealing picture of food that we want to eat, right? And they can do that kind of stuff. So she gets way into it, but basically when we get stressed, right, we tend to see danger and signs of danger. We don't just see danger, we see signs of danger. Our brains have the ability to see into the future and remember the past. So that means when, you know, we don't need immediate stimuli to be on alert. We know that when something's coming, we know for signs. So people that want to manipulate us and work against us and work on those core processes of us, they want to keep triggering the warnings so that we know something's up. We got the hair on the back of our neck is up. We know there's something going on, but we're not getting the teeth and the eyes in our face, right? They know how to manipulate in words to get that stimulus out of us. And she explains better than I can our physiological, whatever the words are, you know, reaction to that is to want to get the hell out of Dodge. We either want to, I always heard flight or flight, but she says fight, flight, or freeze. So there's now our third F that I didn't know about. So, you know, we want to do something when we're alerted, and then these different systems and medias and processes and strategies against us are designed to get us to invoke these things. And then we repress. We have no physical way to deal with what we hear on the news necessarily, right? You can't just run towards the news. You can't go beat the news with a club, and you can't yell at the news. You can't do the things that get rid of the adrenaline and the other physiological blah, blah, blahs that happen inside of us. So she gets into this, and what you're talking about doing there is a physical, is it a manifestation, right word? Like a physical thing to do in response to frustration, stress, and anxiety or whatever. So as a therapeutic way to deal with the shit that they're creating, let's figure out, and I'm saying all that because now I'm going to take and give you all a shit ton of work. So Walt's over here volunteering to do stuff, and DJ said he's going to facilitate it, right? Enable it. So instead of doing a sewing circle like in the olden days, or while you're doing a sewing circle, what about doing let's all get together on a certain day, maybe twice a month, maybe every week, maybe, you know, some periodic number. And then everybody sits down, everybody gets together. Some of these things, if someone's got the $25 to pay for it, like Gizzard, who I don't know if he listens to this show because, you know, I don't know what time chickens go to sleep, but, you know, somebody that can have, maybe DJ's not into it. He used to be 2A, but he jumped out of here. But,
I think it's his connection, but yeah.
Nine. So, but somebody who has the ability to bring more than a couple of people into one of these things, or we go over to GunTube where we can have a bunch of people. GunTube.org is a video hosting platform that's 2A friendly. It's hosted here in the United States, North Carolina, by human beings in South Carolina, Southern Carolina, that's what they call it. So we could go over to that platform, which also streams over here at Stupid YouTube, and have a write your 2A meetings where we get together, we share letters, we figure out what local, state, and federal level stuff can be addressed, and we do a virtual wimpy attempt to emulate what the ladies of the DC Project actually have the freaking cojones to do every year, is get together and go talk to representatives and get in their face, learn to know them. And we can do a week, like mopey pale imitation of it, but on a regular basis. And then people get used to the systems, and we can bring people on board, and then ideally do a follow-up video, and everybody who participates does a follow-up video, talk about what they did and how, offer those PDFs all over the place on our own websites, our own URLs out there, so that they're not at the discretion or whim of a video being removed or something on a big platform. and then put them on the big floor platforms as well. And I can link to them. But if you guys are down, every second matters is something that happens on the second that could easily turn into let's all share and write letters on the second, or it could be on a different day. So it doesn't quark every second matters. Like you can two-way quark, it's the thing. You can ruin every second matters by quarking it, or you could do it on the opposite, whatever the opposite of the second is.
I'll raise you.
It's 20 seconds.
I like it. No, this is unprecedented. This hasn't happened since the olden days.
Yeah, I'll raise you. So it's very easy for me to do it when I have an old fashioned with me, but because I feel so classy, you know, with the big ice cubes and everything. But I will say, why not like let's set a weekly date, and whether it's Daily Gun Show, whether it's somewhere else, what if we did it live, and what if we had the chat let us know? So while we're say DJ has a technical communication background, I'm actually working on my minor is in technical communication right now, actually. So that's cool. And then, so I'm thinking like, hey, what if we're getting this influx of, hey, here's where we're identifying issues. Here's where we need help because I don't know how to write this letter, or, you know, writing a big long letter is intimidating, or writing this paragraph is difficult. Let us know what's going on. And then we will take the time. We could take the time in a live stream and just be like, hey, here, boom, let me get this out for you. And we'll just mad produce content for you and go insane on producing content for you in that hour and researching all that stuff. And we just set an hour, invite all our subscribers, invite everyone who's a Second Amendment advocate to come and participate with us. And boom, we just hammer it out. We do it live and we show everyone what steps we do. We encourage other people to get in on it. Like I said, I don't know if Daily Gun Show is the place for it. I don't know if other channels might have a good way of doing it. I'd be down to live stream that content on my channel. So
this is just too late. So it doesn't have to be here by any means. But yes, I'm down. Big ass yes. Anytime you got 100% support on that one. Just pick the date and let's start immediately. We start on Christmas. But I don't care. Whenever you guys want to do it, I'm down. And you don't have to do anything in stone. You can always start, try, and alternate or move, or what I'm trying to say, adapt.
I'm down. I really like the idea.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, actually, I've never seen anybody try something like that before, so I'd be down. I don't know what during the day we had it. I don't know.
Well, and one quick point, we don't have to limit ourselves to our own jurisdictions. If I'm seeing that as being an incredible evolution, because what the fuck if everybody from Texas, Nebraska, Iowa, Arizona, Pennsylvania were suddenly migrating letters to a Florida city council or something, or
two things. Number one, let's not bite off more than we can chew. I don't like this to try to get too big of goals here. And two, we got to know our roles. Like, are we allowed to do this?
I mean, we have a First Amendment, so I can write a letter for whoever needs one. So I'll tell you what. You tell me anyone has freedom, free license, and as long as I have time and I'm able, you need a letter written, you need a tweet, you need a sassy reply, whatever you need. You let me know what copy you need written, and I will write that for you. As far as the Second Amendment goes, I'll offer that as a free service. So wherever it is, doesn't matter. I'm willing to take that on. I don't think that's too big because it's just based on the viewership and who interacts, and then I'll be focusing on my jurisdiction, researching mine. But because here in California, I've got enough fights. But yeah, if someone in Oklahoma needs a little bit of help, I don't know what going off, but yeah.
No, DJ's not talking about like somebody else is going to do your work for you, but we're talking about bringing people in from wherever, and then when applicable, sending a letter. But are you right? You're not saying like let's sit down every week and try to do the whole country every week.
No, just like, hey, let's see where there's some issues. Let's see where our viewers are reporting stuff. Let's see where we know stuff's going on, and we focus on stuff within our control, right? And then we focus on stuff where we're made aware over time. So like in California, I have a series of fights because gun control is just constant. So any success and any pushback is good right now for me. So like I know what my threshold is for success, right? Because I'm overwhelmed. So if I'm treading water, I'm good to go right now. I would like to be doing better than treading water in California. That would be the long-term goal. But right now, if we can just tread water with 2A and we can win a couple of these court cases and we can prevent a couple more bad laws from coming through, that would be really good. So like, starting without biting off more than we can chew there as far as our expectations.
I was totally
Right?
kidding.
But yeah, but yeah, if you're in Oklahoma and you're just like, hey, they're looking at passing this bill and to, force like, mental health screenings, or they're looking at passing this bill that's going to mandate safe storage where I have to disassemble my firearm and keep my ammo triple locked and whatever, then yeah, let me know about it. Just because I'm in California doesn't mean I can't help you. Right. So like, lean on me, feel free.
And instead of just being like a middle of the night, been in plenty of middle of the night strategy sessions. So let's, to make it more effective, let's first say, or I'm thinking of a couple ways to handle it. But first off, there's been other attempts at something similar. And one of those was the early watch. And that was an attempt to gather news on the Second Amendment focus and report it every morning. And they were meeting literally every weekday morning. And that didn't happen for lots of reasons or whatever. But then it has just recently restarted over on guntube.org and here on YouTube. And that's being done by Night Strike and Tony. So it's possible to do it in coordination, or maybe like just after that show ends, or, like adjacent to that show, because I don't want to just jump in and assume anything. And they do have a, plan for that show, right? But we could do it. That would be a daytime thing. That's what I was going to say. Is a daytime time slot would be the most applicable for viewership, or would apply most for viewership. Then you got Tuesday through Thursday are your best days of the week for the number of viewers. However, I don't know if something like that is number of viewers is a factor for something like that, or if it would be more of a factor of when it's more appropriate for those letters to be effective to the legislature. So if we're going to send stuff on Friday because it's fun for us to meet on Friday, and we write a bunch of letters and send them on Friday afternoon, are those effective letters? We got together on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning and sent those on a Tuesday afternoon, would that be effective? So I don't know if, there's that angle. Coming in with a bunch of ideas is great, and I don't want to bog it down with too many rules. I was kidding, but we don't want to just fly at it without any kind of, like you say, like realistic expectations of it. So that's all I was going to just throw in. It's like, instead of just being whimsy and then having it fall through, let's give it a little bit of structure, come up with a day, dedicate a couple of shows, and just do the necessary pieces so that it actually happens. Give it a couple of weeks. And then I was also going to say, I'm not against biting off more you can chew, do it, right? But maybe start with a smaller premise, like let's get together and write, and whoever comes to the table is who's included. And then if it grows, it grows. But if it doesn't grow, then we can seek out other stuff to write about if we've ran out of local stuff. But you know what I mean? Instead of trying to say if, when, let's just let it happen. So let's just get together and for an hour, write locally, state, and nationally for each of us. And then whoever shows up and participates for each of them. And I don't know, I'll let you guys, I don't want to monopolize it more than this, but do we want to maybe write a letter for Arizona and then go, here's what I wrote. Do you want to write a letter for Arizona? And then I wrote one from California. I like to do something like swap the thing. I don't know if that's effective or a waste of time, or you can swap.
I think, yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead, DJ.
No, just that's valid. Absolutely.
So I think that would actually be a good thing if we all had the ability to write one for each state. Like say, something pops up in California. So Walt writes one for California. I write one, DJ, G-Webs. And then if we're all like, hey, these are all great, well, now we have 4 different letters that we can throw out there as templates and say, hey, you want to send something to your legislators? Send this. You got 4 different options. Pick which one you like. Send it off to them.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure that I would want to make something, we'd have to create something then so generic as to be able to apply it. And though I do want to emphasize that, our individual voices, independent individual voices are just that, your tone, your tenor, your message, all those things being pretty independent. I totally see where you're coming from, barbecue, and but maybe if we just did scale back instead of our personalized versions, more like how we approach writing that sort of thing, and then people are encouraged to work in their own personal details. I don't want us to fall into a trap of being perceived as stuffing a ballot box or something like that. All these unknown folks who are just their
That's
return
fair, yeah.
their return address is their only independence.
Realistically, a dozen people might participate, a couple of dozen. It's an effort to get a momentum going, but it's unless some magical entity drops in and deems it appropriate and urges people to do it, it's not going to get so many people that they'd ever go, oh, I suspect the validity of these now. We're not talking like Rush Limbaugh urged people to write the same form letter or something, right? We're talking about swapping a couple of things just to get ourselves exercised in the concept and to show others that it's possible to maybe have fun doing it or to do it as a group effort. If it's something that could be done, as a something they can do at a gun shop or at the range. What if people brought some sort of a printed thing to a range on the weekend for recreational shooting or to a match and said, hey, I've got a petition, just like somebody might say, hey, here's a petition to tell that jerk down the road to quit burning tires every Saturday when we're trying to shoot.
Hell yeah, watch this evolve. That's cool. This is a dynamic and interesting conversation, y'all. We're breaking some ground.
And I can see a lot of room for this to expand too. So like one thing that I've done, because I've live streamed on my Discord and things like that. One thing that I've done on my Discord is I've jumped on Twitter and just been like, hey, for an hour, we're just going to reply with sassy clapbacks to anti-gunners. And all we're trying to do is just provoke a conversation. And my God, if you could see the amount of anti-gun tweets get deleted and walked back when they're talking to someone that knows what the hell they're talking about, it's incredible. So like...
It sounds interesting, and it sounds like a tactic that if people are doing it, they're not sharing it. And maybe not as like a tag you're it or like a haha these assholes, but if like you did it in an educational or an informational like awareness way, like here's something that we do and it's a little bit fun for us, but it's certainly educational, and each time we're able to get a little bit further with these people. It's like learning a puzzle or figuring out a clue or something. Like I would encourage you to share that, at least how you've done when you've answered questions on Discord shit, like the screen capture.
That's something. That's something where I like. So just like with the Twitter example, right? What I would do is I would use these kind of sassy, really like controversial kind of buy-in. They like get the buy-in and get the engagement off the question. So like someone's like, yeah, we need to confiscate all the guns on Twitter, and they're unironic about it. I just say, yeah, we'll just get a magnet, right? Just suck them all up into the sky. That's how that works, right? And wait for their response. And their response is, well, actually, if we do these series of grandfathering programs, like, yeah, that's totally going to work for the kid in Chicago right now. Or do we want to talk about actual solutions that will help, like improving their education and improving income equality? And so then from there, we get into an actual policy discussion that can be fruitful, right? So it's a hook to get their attention and to kind of get their hackles up a little bit and throw them off. But then from there, we do that. So you know what? Yeah, I'm seeing the love for this idea in the comments right now. I'm seeing everyone be like, yes, let's workshop, let's write. Yeah, screw it. You know what? Let's do something. I'm down to do this stream. What, today is Thursday?
Yeah.
I'll host a stream tomorrow. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's get it done.
Why don't we do it tomorrow to test it out? But I'd still suggest doing it on a Monday or a Tuesday earlier in the day. I'm thinking is the best for the result to be effective. The emails that get sent, especially if they get sent immediately, so that it's not like, oh, and then now I'll send it, and then they don't get sent or something.
Yeah, I could do like a Monday. I could do probably like a Monday morning. I'm trying to think of like when I'll actually have a job and be working again. But I could probably do like a Monday or Tuesday morning for now, and then eventually shift into an evening. But
Sunday after Gary show, Gary Gizzard does a live conversation all Sunday, like 4 hours. After that, there's like a gap before some other people do their chats, and then 7 p.m. Eastern is when Locked and Loaded Latinas go on. That is definitely the best live two-way conversation consistently for a while now. Anyway, I don't know what your Sundays are like, but then Sunday, if we sent them immediately, they'd be in inboxes Monday morning. However, as far as doing business, that's almost as bad as sending. So it's the same as sending stuff Friday night. It's literally exactly the same as sending stuff Friday night. They're going to have a massive inbox on Monday morning, and this will be the last thing in it. So anyway, I don't think Sunday's ideal, but at least it would be better if, like you say, if you got a 9 to 5, at least it might be possible. But I don't know if this needs to be something that's set in stone forever. Why don't we do it tomorrow, see what it's like, and then just wing it on earlier in the week as it works for whoever.
Yeah, that sounds great.
If you're going to host it forever, if it's going to be a round robin, like sewing. I'm thinking of like a sewing circle. I keep saying sewing circle, but I'm thinking of like when people would read books. I don't know what that's called. They read books. I guess it's just a book club, right? You'd read books and then get together and talk about the book. Like people do that. It's a thing. I've seen it in movies. So I figured they do.
My wife's in a reading club.
Yeah, they do that at a different house each month or each whenever, right? Like they don't go to the same person's house.
Well, now they do it on Zoom.
Well, okay, but you know, oh, that's true. But whatever, whoever's channel, I don't know. But like I say, if you wanted to do it on the same channel all the time, that would make one. It would give your channel something to do, and it would make it more consistent for everybody. So I don't think there's a loss either way, but I don't think there's a win either way.
Oh, and I'm getting like full disclosure. I think the thing that's frustrating me the most right now is like when I see big channels with gun stuff. And I'm not seeing the pro gun or pro 2A channels actually put out good, like, hey, this is what we need to do. And I don't see them actually push the call to action. I see a lot of just kind of creating panic, which oftentimes is justified. Oftentimes these channels are covering the news really, really well. And they're just explaining what's going on and how insane it is. But I think the next step would be, well, then why wouldn't you tell people what they can do about it, right? Like,
tell them. But as soon as you start a show, then they can say, here's a big thing to be worried about. Now go to Walt's show and learn how to do something about it. And that could actually be not only therapeutic, but effective for the whole team. And then what'll happen is somebody will go, oh, I'm going to do that instead of that guy. And then there's 17 people doing it in different days. And then it's turns into a thing that channels do. Right now, channels do what they do because they followed the channel in front of them doing it. They literally get together and talk about what they can do it most people the same way.
Yeah, I see that a lot, and that's kind of the thing. Like, I've swung at some bigger YouTubers, and I'm not afraid to name names. Like what I've debated Yankee Marshall in the past. I think he's incredibly pro 2A. And I really like the news segment that he's doing, right? Like, and I've talked about that. Like, I think that the direction he's taking with that inside gun segment is so good for 2A. I think it's incredible. I've swung at like Johnny B. I've swung at like Gun Nuts Media. I have no problem being critical of how other people are communicating within the 2A community. And that's actually like how I got my start was in responding to like Gun Nuts Media versus Paul Harrell and like the beef that they had and just like some silly YouTube drama that was going on in the background. But Gun Nuts Media, that's Caleb Giddings. And he's kind of like a revolver competition shooter type. And I think he has like an Air Force background as well. And it's not that he's not knowledgeable, but he went off the cuff kind of impulsively at Paul Harrell, who
Oregon.
Paul Harrell is like the OG gun instructor, right? Like he is the guy. So you got to come correct if you're going to do that. And he did not come correct for that. And he got absolutely ruined on that. And I don't think his growth has been reflective of that. It seems.
I was kind of drunk in that whole thing too.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't have a problem with a little bit of whiskey myself, but
Wait a second. So Homeboy was drunk when he just started railing on Harold or something?
Yeah, and you can imagine how that turned out. So basically he was saying that Paul Harrell didn't know how to use revolvers because he was saying to he was saying that Paul Harrell said the technique that I use, and I'm not advocating that you use it, but the technique that I use is, I push down the release, I allow the cylinder to fall, and I hit the ejector rod, and the casings fall out, and then I reload using my stripper clips or moon clips or whatever. And I don't know revolvers, so then I insert it back in, and then we're good to go. So that was what Paul Harrell was saying. Caleb took issue. So Gun Nuts Media took issue with what was it? It was saying hit the ejector rod because you might hurt your hand or burn your hand on the ejector rod, and that might also break the ejector rod somehow, as though guns aren't made to be treated like tools. And so there was a lot of controversy there, but then he also threw in a lot of like personal insults, like Paul Harrell hasn't shot competitions. Paul Harrell doesn't know what he's talking about with revolvers. Paul Harrell doesn't shoot with revolvers. And it's like, dude, like Paul Harrell is like legit shot people. Like Paul Harrell has totes of trophies and medals that he's won. He can't fit them all in a room. This guy is insane, and you're gonna come out here. But anyway, point being is that I have no problem swinging at someone that's not genuinely advocating 2A, I think is what I'm trying to get to. But anyway, but that's a little bit of backstory on what happened.
Well, I haven't watched anybody's videos that you're talking about. Did Paul Harrell done 2A stuff? Is he 2A?
No, he's not 2A really. He's an old school instructor, and I think he was I don't know what his rank was, but yeah, I mean he's a guy that's about 10, 15 years older than us, and he does really long form shit. And so you have to be a fan, or he turns you off in the first 5 minutes. Now, I used to consume a lot of his stuff because he's got great. He is not rich in technical data. He's rich in application, tempered with being an educator. So he's not trying to convince somebody that their 2A right is going to be best enhanced by this technique. It's more like, this is how I do it. This is why I do it. I'm not telling you to do it, but if but give this a try kind of deal. He doesn't require people. He doesn't want his ego stroked like a lot of these other cats do. He's just there to do his deed and get done.
Yeah, he'll shoot in the snow. He's out there all the time, no matter what the weather's out. He's out there in the wilderness.
Yeah, like I'm confident that he's very pro 2A. That's just based off of me seeing his guns and what he owns. I'm confident that he's pro 2A, but I'm also he's not a political channel at all. He's not an activist channel at all. He is there to educate on how firearms work and are operated. He compares different ammo selections, barrel lengths, different platforms, all that stuff.
What size channel? What kind of
he's coming up on I think 700,000 subscribers or 800,000, something like that. He's pretty big.
Is it? I say last I saw was 500,000. I didn't realize he jumped that much.
Yeah, let me I'm gonna see if I can pull him up right now.
And how many views does a video get when he posts a video?
Oh, he'll get hundreds of thousands. He's good to go.
Yeah.
So when we're in a situation where we've got 14 days for the ATF to take comments on the races, you can get how many views in a video? 15,000? What do you say?
Here, I'll link you to his channel in the chat here.
Well, and can you, while you're looking at that, Walt, can you?
Oh yeah, he's 605,000.
Okay, and can you tell easily how long his channel's been around? Because I'm not sure how long he has.
Yeah, let me go check his first upload.
You always just go to the about tab.
He's been here for 8 years. And he started under, I think it was disaster contingency specialist. I think it was kind of almost like a prepper channel to start with.
If you go to the about tab, it'll tell you when the channel started on YouTube.
Yeah, he joined April 22nd of 2012, and he has 85 million views. So he's not doing bad. And he's someone that actually I know a lot of liberal gun owners really like because he is apolitical. So one of the turnoffs for them is when they go to a gun shop and they hear a whole bunch of pro-Trump or whatever because they're not fans of Trump, right? So when they need to get knowledge and they can hear it outside of a context that's just the classic kind of conservative voice, that gives them something that they can listen to easier. So there's a lot of new gun owners that are finding Paul Harrell and find his content very valuable because of the depth and because of again, that apolitical kind of nature of it. So it's kind of an interesting niche for him. But,
and Walt, the way that he presents his information, you might want to think about this. He's very calm. He's very collected, though he does lose his train of thought sometimes. You can tell he did a lot of pistol instruction. He is like so even-tempered about things and makes sure that he is speaking clearly so that he's not that halting. I'm exaggerating, but yeah, that's an advantage also for the novice. Though it is hard to hang with that guy that long, at least in repeated viewings, you feel like the lecture isn't completely shooting over your head.
Yeah, like in some of his content too, right? Like I think it's his second most recent upload. And I think he dropped it, and this is actually very pro 2A content. It's called Taking Your Girlfriend/Boyfriend to the Range. And that's got 141,000 views. And that's on how to take your significant other to the range in a way that's not going to piss them off, where they're going to have a good time, and where you're not hurting their ego. And he's going to tell you for 32 minutes and 32 seconds how to do that successfully. And I think that's an incredible thing to do. I understand it's not viral content in the sense that that's not the clickbaity thing, but that's really useful.
Is he monetized?
He's monetized via Patreon, I think only. I'm not sure I don't think I've ever seen an ad before a Paul Harrell video. So
no, I never have. I don't think that he does any of that monetization at all. I don't think he's paying attention to it.
Yeah, no corporate sponsors or anything. So he is solely functioning off of his viewership and what they decide to contribute to his channel.
I've seen an ad in front of his video, so
YouTube I know now will monetize. I think YouTube now is going to monetize all videos that are monetizable. But
you guys said that you've never seen an ad in this video, and like you just said, YouTube will show a video even if your channel isn't monetized, so that doesn't compute.
Yeah, I also have ad block on, so
right. So that's what I'm saying. If you guys aren't paying attention and he doesn't talk about it, it doesn't mean that it's not monetized. So 141,000 views is not insignificant income. So you said that it's not. You're saying something about that video isn't necessarily playing to the logarithm. 140,000 views in a week shows you that that's 20,000 views a day to the contrary. It doesn't matter what the logarithm's doing. So I heard his name a lot, so he obviously gets views.
Yeah, but he's good. I don't think that he's necessarily like, if I look at his like if you go and look at his tags aren't amazing on videos or anything. Like he's not running a fantastic SEO game or anything like that.
Right. So there's people that try hard and there's people that get whatever momentum in spite of efforting towards it or whatever. So I'm looking at his playlist: home defense, Winchester, range ammo, accurate, personal protection. So it's all just magazine articles. And then all his videos are videos of shooting stuff. That's 2A. Does he talk about in that 30 minutes like rights are important? Or like,
no, not exclusively and not consistently. But you are right. It is a bit like it's a live action or recorded to tape action, live action version of a magazine article for sure.
So if somebody were to go up right now and make a video and say, the ATF isn't coming after your braces, like, don't worry about this. Take a snooze, go on Christmas break. Like, don't do nothing, right? Like, just ridiculous. Like, don't be upset about the ATF. Whatever they do is good. Like, that video would be scorned, and you would say, I have a difference of opinion with you.
Yeah, like he wouldn't come out and say that unless someone was specifically bringing him up in a way where he would be engaged. But yeah,
an example of a video that no one would stand around and go, oh, I'm going to let that slide. But everybody will let slide when nobody says anything. That's all I'm saying. I don't know who this guy is. I hear his name all the damn time. But when you guys said, oh, yeah, he's 2A, and then doesn't even have a video about anything, like, mean, he's been around since 12, so he's been around through a couple of panics, through a couple of stresses and stuff. I mean, he's not.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's not a reactionary, and he doesn't soapbox. So I guess that, you know, I mean, it's not a terribly active 2A presence, but it's definitely in support of.
Sounds like he's pro-gun as shit.
Yeah.
You know, but does that make you 2A?
No, I understand the distinction you're drawing, and you're not inaccurate.
All right, that's all I'm getting at. Because I thought he was somebody on our side. He's not on our side, but he's not on our side. He's just out there saying stuff while the world's burning. Not while the world's burning, but while ever the world's doing, he's over there doing his thing. Gary's saying he works as a dental hygienist. He has other income. Being retired military, probably has no need for the income. Then, I don't know. Like I say, I don't care. Everybody's allowed to be capitalist as they want. But there are channels out there that make a big stink about how they've turned off monetization. I do not accept AdSense from Google. It's not possible. Every ad you see is going straight to Google. Don't give me super chats or whatever. You can't give somebody super chats if they're not on live, but it's not insignificant income if 147 views or whatever, the ton of numbers. I don't know. Nobody likes to talk about numbers, but it doesn't matter. I don't care. All I'm saying is I don't give a shit about how much money he's making. I'm just saying that kind of viewership, what would 147,000 emails do? What would it influence 147,000 people to have somebody whose grandfather would give advice to be active instead of ignore the situation? I think that's probably one of the opinions that others would have when they focus on some of the people who exploit or whatever. This isn't exploitation. It's just ignoration. Is that a word? Like not paying attention. You don't have to jump into your reaction, but and we're just talking about him, but he is by no means the only channel like that. He's not even big. I know channels. I was talking about a channel earlier who I saw one of their little sub channels starting up, because the channels that are exploiting us, the ones that are way worse than anything this guy doesn't sound like he's intending to do nothing. He's just not standing up and doing extra shit on top of whatever the hell he's doing. But he's obviously makes everybody happy. He's giving them good content or what, right? But I'm just saying there's people out there that are way bigger than him, sucking money down, that are using guns and being our representatives, unfortunately, because they get so much reach compared to anybody that we're talking about here. Those big channels that just do stuff on the international level make us look like Americans look like a bunch of yahoos because they're just being weird with guns.
Yeah, I think Wizard's comment there captures it the best. So like he says that he is not good at it as a political activist and that others do that much better than he does. I think that speaks pretty true of Paul. He's not there for talking about all the different political issues. That's not really what he's about. So if we want to say he's not a designated pro 2A channel, I understand where that's coming from, and I would agree with that. I think the note of he's bringing people into gun culture and he's talking to people that are normally left out of gun culture because of, I think, like some of the political opinions and some of the things that are going on behind the scenes, or some of the things that they perceive to be happening in gun culture. The fact that he's able to engage with those people and just discuss guns and how to use them, I see as a net positive for 2A culture. So I guess if you needed me to kind of codify what I thought a little bit better, I think that's what I would say. So I see him as a net. Neutral. Yeah, I see him as a net positive for 2A, even if his content is not specifically pro 2A, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's totally a thing.
I like the lamp off.
There's another guy. Oh wait, what did he say?
I couldn't.
Guy. He's another guy who comes around every once in a while, and everybody's like, "Oh, that guy's super 2A." I'm like, dude, that he doesn't even stay in this country for the 4th of July. What makes you think he's 2A? He just happens to have enough money to be able to buy whatever he feels like, and he felt like buying a crap load of guns and take pictures with them.
Oh, like the Dan Bilzerian effect there.
Oh crap! I forgot that you know that one guy. Yeah, but I was going to say that guy. I totally forgot about that. But you don't know him, right? Like
I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know Dan Bilzerian personally. I just happen to know his cousin, which is really cool and weird and strange. But I love Pete, his cousin. He's a great dude. But yeah, as far as like, yeah, that you know, that's kind of my thing too, because we could talk about all these allegedly pro 2A people, like we could talk about our Black Rifle Coffee companies and all the people that go out there and Instagram with all the guns, or they'll go to the ranges where someone owns something in full auto and they'll go shoot it because it's so cool. And I think that stuff's good, but that doesn't make you pro 2A to me, right? Like what would make someone pro 2A to me is that you consistently vote for candidates, policies you advocate for, with your rhetoric, your actions, you advocate for Second Amendment freedoms. And that's simply just the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Keeping it as simple as that. If that is the team you're on, then you're pro 2A. If you think that there are things that can be infringed, like we should have background checks, we should have mental health screenings, we should limit what people are allowed to buy and how much people are allowed to buy, those are infringements, so then you're not pro 2A. And I'm not opposed to anti-2A people existing. I obviously disagree with them. I'll talk with them and debate with them. But what would be helpful, I think, is just to make sure that it's clear kind of what side you're on. But if you could be pro-gun and still not pro 2A, in my mind, at least how I split it up.
Oh, everyone is. Almost every single person is pro-gun and not pro 2A. Like anybody that goes around going, the Second Amendment gives us the right to own guns, isn't even 2A. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about, right? You got to have that understanding that the Second Amendment protects the right? It restricts the government from. That's a barometer maybe. But I was going to say, as you're saying that I don't disagree. It's just that I do disagree. I guess that everybody's got a different measure, right? And you can slip back and forth, and you can make a statement that sounds dumbass when you think about it. And every once in a while, people are profound as well. So, we're all just humans doing our thing. And I just like to differentiate between guns is liking an object or some sort of whatever trip you're on because you have a gun in your hand, and people seriously go on weird trips when they got a gun in their hand on all different angles. And then the concept that the Second Amendment is a fundamental thing, and that's totally separate. Very few gun owners are into the Second Amendment. And unfortunately, too many people want to be snarky and sarcastic because it's easier to blow things off than to put any actual thought into it. So I play into that and blow people off with the, you're not 2A or it's not 2A, because it's a great way to keep hip and trendy with, basically saying you give a shit or you don't give a shit, or like you understand there's fundamental issues here, or this is just a game to you. Like you're willing to walk away as soon as somebody tells you can't have your hobby anymore. You'll fucking go get a motorcycle, or you'll decide that selling something else is just as easy, or that there's some other unregulated thing that you can sell, or that you can get a chick to hold or whatever. Like there's all kinds of people out there, and we're not going to solve it. There's no finish line. And you can be resolved to be an observer, or you can understand that no single drop thinks it's responsible for the flood, and you can value your voice and be part of it. I want to thank you for being part of our show tonight. We're ending it really weird tonight on this note. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back to pick you up later.